Hey there, welcome to Coding with Drew. In this video, we will be learning how JavaScript, HTML, and CSS work together. Web developers are concerned with three languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This trifecta makes up web pages today, and HTML is the glue that holds it all together. The first thing that will load when a browser makes a call to a web address is the HTML document. This is where the content of the page lives. HTML gives the page structure and adds semantics. CSS is then called, typically in the header, since the browser reads the document one line at a time from top to bottom. It then will request the .css file. It's my strong opinion that these three languages should intersect as little as possible. That means use HTML documents for HTML code and use .css files for CSS. Try not to use inline CSS or inline JavaScript in your HTML file wherever possible. As .css files are loaded, the HTML document takes form and will be presented as a web developer intended, with background colors and fonts and things like that. Each language has its own purpose, and they each build upon one another. JavaScript enhances the behavior of the web page, and it should be loaded in its own file. As more and more web applications and devices come to market, the more this idea of separating languages is becoming more widely adopted. There is a noteworthy exception, which I have to talk about because the industry largely adopted React.js. React handles all the things with JavaScript. I will have a JavaScript React course sometime in the future. So you're probably asking where to start, right? My suggestion is to start with HTML and semantically write out your content, as it's the most important part of your website. Being plain HTML, it'll work on all devices. It's inherently accessible to all users and loads quickly on slow connections. Next, we'll start to add CSS rules in a separate file to keep rules regarding how the page looks separate. We can reuse this file across our site to establish a theme, so all of our buttons use the same color, border, size, and shape. You get the idea. Lastly, we can start adding functionality to enhance the site's usability or experience by keeping it separate. Being in their own file and being called at the bottom of the HTML page means that you can reuse this file on other pages. This will also mean that even if the JavaScript files fail to load, you'll still see the site as intended. JavaScript is written in plain text, just like HTML and CSS. You don't need any special interpreters or tools to write it. Let's add a time to an HTML document. Let's start with GitHub. So go to GitHub, and since you've already taken the Git section of this course, you should already have an account. Log in. All right. So in GitHub, now we're going to create a new repository, and we're going to call it Portfolio. Now mine's going to say Student Portfolio. Just call yours Portfolio. We're going to not make any changes. We're just going to keep it public, and we're going to create the repository. Now we're going to click SSH after this is done. We're going to copy this, and then we're going to open up our terminal. In our terminal, we're going to say git clone, and then that SSH command that we copied. I'm going to paste that in there and press return. And it's asking me if I'd like to connect, and I'm going to say yes. And it's asking me for my password. Okay, now it says I appear to have cloned an empty repository. If I ls, I should see student repository. I'm going to change directories into student portfolio, in your case, portfolio. And now I'm going to make a new directory, and I'm going to call this hello world. All right. The last thing that we're going to do in this video is we're going to open it up in our Visual Studio Code. So we're going to type in code dot. And since code dot is not found on this new computer, we're going to install it. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code directly. And we're going to press Command P. and then we're going to type in greater than, we're going to type in path. And there's the command, install code command in path. And I'm going to click OK. And then it's going to ask me for my password. Now it's successfully added. I'm going to go back to my terminal and I'm going to try to run code dot again. Now, Visual Studio Code has just opened my Hello World directory, and I trust the authors. So here it is. Nothing's there. We're going to get to that in the next video. I'll see you there.